Hey guys, this is Voxside and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial we take a look at how we can use Particular to generate some bats and then have them sort of merge into a text. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. Let's make a new project. Oh, and before I get started, the original download for the project is included in the link in the description of the video, so be sure to follow the link if you want to download the project, and feel free to use the project however you want for your own videos or whatever use you may have for it. Alright, so let's make a new composition. I will name this composition Reveal, and let's make a full HD, and I will make this, let's go with 150 frames, and I will hit OK. So now I can add my text. I will grab my text tool and I will type my text, and while having Ctrl-Shift selected, I can reposition this and it will snap to center if you have Ctrl and Shift selected, so that's a quick little tip. And right away I want to pre-compose this layer, so I'll press Ctrl-Shift-C while having the layer selected, and I will name this text holder. Press OK, and let's add a new solid layer. Hit OK, and I will add effect, transition, linear wipe, and let's see how this animates. So we sort of want to animate from left to right, so I'll use a value of an angle of 270 and sort of animate this like so from left to right. So I'll use a keyframe for 100%. And now if I select my layer and press U, this will give me my keyframe information, and I can go to frame, let's say 50, and set another keyframe for 0. And let's also increase the feather, let's try 75. And I want to pre-compose this transition layer as well, so I'll name this transition, and make sure you have move all attributes into new composition selected. Hit OK, and I will use the text holder, and I will set this to Luma Matte for the transition layer. And now you can see the text is revealing by using the transition layer that we've just created. And now we can grab both of these layers and press Ctrl-Shift-C and pre-compose them as well. And I will name this new comp, let's see, Particular Reveal. And now we can go ahead and add our particular layer. So I will grab a new solid, so that's Ctrl-Y, Particular, and let's add our particular to this. And before I do anything to the particular layer, I want to set the particular reveal layer that we composition that we've created to be 3D, and I don't want to, I will just hide this. And now back in my particular layer to emitter, and for emitter type I will use a layer, and emitter size Z we can set this to 0, and for a layer I will use particular reveal, and if I increase the particles per second, let's actually use 70,000, which is the original value that I've used in the original project. And you can kind of see we're generating some particles based on the text. And we can stop generating at frame 50, which is where the transition ends. So for my particles per second, I will set a keyframe for 70,000 at frame 49. And while having the layer selected, I will press U and then move a frame forward and then set another keyframe for 0. And this will just sort of stop generating the particles as soon as the transition is complete. Alright, so we get this sort of effect, which if I scrub in reverse, you can kind of see we're sort of starting to get the effect that we want. Alright, so let's see what settings we can use over here. For velocity, I think I was using a value of like 7,000 maybe. Oh no, that's too high, so maybe 700. Alright. So something like this, and let's increase the velocity random, maybe 35. So something like this, and let's go to our particle settings, and I will leave the settings for life at 3. And let's go back actually to layer emitter settings, and for layer RGB usage, let's change this to lightness and size. Alright, and I can go to my rendering, and for motion blur I will enable motion blur. And let's go to physics and set a negative gravity value, so they just sort of float up a bit. Let's increase the value, so we get sort of like this effect. And this will be a good time to add our texture with the bat. So I will go ahead and double click inside the project window, and I will use my bat loop. And this bat loop.mov is available in the project file that you can download on my website. And with this I will add inside a new composition, and you can see here we just have a loop of a bat. And let's name this composition, let's go with particle texture, and let's go back inside our reveal, and I will drop my particle texture comp, and I don't want to see this, so I will hide it. And for my particular layer I will go to particle, and for particle type I will use a sprite, and for texture I will use particle texture. And now if I increase the size, we should start seeing our bats, and here you can see it. And for my time sampling I want to use start at birth and loop. Alright, so here we have our bats, and maybe, so I think the size it's alright for our bats, maybe just slightly lower, and we might not need as many sprites as here. So let's actually set this particle per seconds value to maybe 4,000 or 40,000, sorry. And let's see what other options we have over here. Let's use a size random of maybe 60%, and for opacity we'll leave this we'll leave that as it is. So for rotation I also want to increase the random rotation. This will just generate some variation in our bats, and you can kind of see how they form. And let's actually go back in my layer emitter here, and let's actually use the original RGB particle color option for this. I think this will, yeah, this gives a better effect. Alright, and let's actually set this back to 70,000. And for layer sampling, very important, use particle birth time. Alright, so now you can see it's they're kind of starting where the transition starts, and then when the transition ends the particles no longer generate. And if I play this in reverse, you can kind of see we're sort of starting to get the effect. And let's see what else we can change. Let's increase the velocity and see how that looks. Alright, so I think maybe for direction I want to use a directional velocity. Right, so this is a much cleaner result. And maybe let's actually just increase the gravity, I mean decrease the value maybe to negative 160. Alright, so it's starting to look alright. And I think we can move on to our actual effect. Alright, so let's save this first, and I will make a new composition, and I will name this main reveal, and make this HD, and let's go with 200 frames, hit OK, and then I will just drop my original reveal composition that we've just worked on. And if I right click this layer and go to time, I can then select time reverse layer, and you can kind of see now we're sort of creating the effect backwards, and I can just retime this just so the ending starts right at the beginning, so maybe somewhere around this part, something like this. And we can go ahead and add our background and our text and all the other layers. Alright, so let's make a new solid layer, and I will name this BG for background. And for this guy I want to add a generate for color gradient, and let's pick some shades of blue, maybe some black, some gray, and another blue. Let's just flip this around a bit and increase the blend value. So just sort of create an interesting gradient effect which will act as our sky. And I want to add a new layer, and I will place this below the reveal layer, and I will add a fractal noise to this, and I will set the contrast to be maybe 12, and I will set this to be soft light and increase the scale for this. So this will just give it an interesting pattern. And for clouds you can simply add a new particular layer. So I will go to Effect, Trapcode Particular. Let's solo this, and let's go to Emitter. Let's set this to Box, and let's sort of increase our size X, Y, and Z to sort of fill our screen. And I don't want to use any velocity for this, maybe a velocity of 4, and maybe increase the particles per second here. And emission extras, I want to set the pre-run to 100. And now with my particle settings, I can set this to cloudlet, increase the feather, increase the size random, decrease the opacity random, and let's actually set the color to be random from gradient. And for our gradient, we can go to color over life and select this blue preset. And instead of this white color over here, I'll just use another grayish blue maybe. So maybe something like this, and decrease the saturation a bit for these other shades of blue. Right, so maybe something like this. And if I unsolo this and set this to be maybe screen, and then decrease the opacity a bit, so we're sort of starting to create our sky. I added an adjustment layer, so that's Control Alt and Y, and let's go to Effect, Curves, and let's increase the contrast a bit, and maybe add a tint and decrease the amount. Maybe set the curves below it, and let's actually increase the blue shadows a bit, maybe something like this. And I will duplicate this layer, so Control D, and I will set this to multiply, and I will grab my ellipse tool mask, and let's create a mask for the lower half and increase the feather, so that's F. And I will duplicate the original adjustment layer that we had and put it above our masked adjustment layer, and I will delete these layers and maybe add another curves to this and just increase the contrast a bit. And for our reveal layer, we can also add a color correction to this, and we can increase the brightness for this, and maybe go to our blue channel and just give it a slight blue, and maybe take away some of the red highlights. Maybe go back to blue, and let's actually increase the blue shadows. Or actually I'm just gonna leave this as it is, and maybe just go back to RGB and increase the overall color, overall brightness a bit. Alright, so we're starting to get our result. Let's go back to our particular layer, and I forgot to set something for my particle options. If I go to opacity over life, I want to use this preset over here, which will sort of fade the particles and create a smooth transition. And now we can go back to our project, and let's grab our original text holder and place it below our reveal, and let's make this a 3D layer. Right, so you can kind of see now all we need to do is sort of overlay these layers, and I will add my transition layer. So this will be above my text holder. And you can kind of see we need to reverse this transition layer, and we can do this by simply pressing S and turning off uniform scale. And for my first value, I will set this from 100 to -100, and this will just sort of flip it around. And now if I set my text holder to be Luma Matte for the transition, you can kind of see our text is revealing, and we just have to grab both of these layers. And actually I will pre-compose these layers first, so I'll press Ctrl Shift C and name this text reveal original. Alright, and now I can simply drag this over and sort of retime it with our bats. Right, so maybe something like this. Right? So we're getting close. Let's actually just make a few more things to make it more interesting. So for my bat reveal, I want to duplicate this layer, and for this layer below it, I want to use a CC radial blur and set this to fading zoom. Sort of place the center somewhere around here and just increase the amount. And now we're sort of getting like this sweet shadow to the text. And I'll set this layer to be screen, and maybe press T and set the opacity, just lower the opacity overall. So something like this. And let's actually animate the center point for this. So with the CC layer radial blur selected, I will animate this maybe starting from somewhere around here, and set the keyframe, and then press U and make this keyframe start at the beginning of the layer, and then just move over maybe towards this part. Alright, so just sort of creating this radial blur effect. And also for my text reveal, I want to go inside my text holder, and I sort of want to animate this text a bit. So I will go to Animate, Tracking, and for my track amount, I will just add a slight tracking animation. So this pretty much just spreads out the words, the letters a bit, and just creates a little more interesting effect. So let's go back here, and let's actually add a camera now. So layer, camera, and I will use an angle of view of 70 degrees. And let's turn off my reveal for now, just so it works faster. And for my camera, I want to go to transform, right click position, and choose separate values. And then I will grab my Z position, set the keyframe at the beginning of the timeline, and at the end of the timeline, I sort of want to zoom in a bit. And I forgot to set both of these text layers to be 3D. Alright, so now we're creating sort of like this zoom, and we can set these layers back a bit. So I'll grab both of these layers and press P, and just push them in Z space a bit. And let's actually just make sure that they're still synced with the original reveal. Alright, so that's looking fine. And I think that's about it. One final thing you can do actually, let's grab this text reveal, and let's go to ramp, and let's add a slight ramp to this, just so it's not plain white. So maybe something like this. And I will also add a perspective, bevel alpha, and I'll set this to edge thickness to be 1, and this just sort of gives it a slight 3D bevel. And then I will add another adjustment layer, and let's add some overall color correction to this, and let's grab a frame over here with the bats and just sort of increase the contrast a bit, and maybe the brightness. So maybe something like this. And I really like doing this effect with the blue. So if you go to your blue channel and just raise the blue shadows a bit, just gives it a nice blue tint to the darker parts of the composition. Alright, so that's about it. If I missed anything, be sure to check the original file, which is included in the link in the description of this video. Hope you learned something new, hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more tutorials, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.